In the secret world of motorbike clubs, the Hells Angels are a mysterious group that is often misunderstood. Beyond their well-known history of rebellion and a closely guarded code of quiet, there is a set of rules that control how they act and what they do as a brotherhood. These rules, which are not open to the public, give us an interesting and sometimes shocking look into how this notorious group works. Here are 20 shocking rules that all Hells Angels must follow. Being a guy is one of the first things you have to do to join the club. In other words, women aren't allowed to join officially. The above does not, however, mean that women are not welcome at any of the club's events. The club, for example, lets old ladies hang out in the hall. Most of the time, this includes the wives or lovers of club members. Some of them can even wear 81 on their clothes. This is called Support 81 or Route 81 in the club, where 8 stands for the letter H and 1 for the letter A. But they still can't go to clubhouse meetings. People can't just join the Hells Angels forever. Women can't join, but guys can't either. A lot of rules must be followed before you can join the Hells Angels. This brings up another rule that everyone in Hells Angels has to follow. They have to have a motorcycle and a valid driver's license. That being said, the Hells Angels don't let just any motorcyclist join. Members can only ride bikes that were made in the United States. They can ride well-known names like Harley Davidson. Everyone has a soft spot for the Harley, both because it was made in the United States and because of its unique, loud rumble. When the Hells Angels show their bikes, they often ride American brands like Indian and Victory, which are allowed. Anyone who is already a Hells Angel has to give their permission before you can join. This is another strange rule that doesn't get around. You might want to change your mind if you really want to join the Hells Angels. A prospect is a new member of the club who wants to join fully. Right now, they need everyone in the club to vote. So, prospects have to go to each charter in the state or region of the funding charter and publicly introduce themselves to the full patch members of the club. As long as it takes, which could be years, prospects will stay prospects. If they can't get the full vote of every full patch member, they will stay prospects. Once new members are approved, they all have to follow a unique and high-secret motorcycle blessing. This is a private ceremony performed within the club. It is intended to bestow protection and good fortune upon a member's bike. While the specific practices remain confidential, the concept revolves around showing respect for the motorcycle and acknowledging its significance in a Hells Angel's life. During this ritual, a member's motorcycle is symbolically blessed, often in the presence of fellow members. It becomes a moment of friendship and shared respect for the biker lifestyle. The motorcycle blessing signifies the special bond between them. But this ritual is more than a charm of protection. It's an expression of unity and shared values. Another rule that everyone in Hells Angels has to follow is that they won't let anyone join who has abused children or tried to be a police officer or jail guard. It is against their rules for anyone to join the Hells Angels who have already sworn allegiance to another cause or group. The club doesn't let police officers, jail guards, or people who have applied in any way into because of its code of silence. A lot of different police departments have said that the Hells Angels are an organized crime group. If a police officer wore a patch, the club's business could be looked at by the police, which is against the club's code of silence. It makes sense that you like bikes or already have one if you want to join a motorbike club. Looking at the last rule, the next one might be shocking. In some biker clubs, there's a practice where women are seen as communal property. They're often referred to as the property of the club members. And by definition, these women are sometimes shared among the members of the club. This practice is rooted in the hyper-masculine ethos of these groups, where women are often objectified and seen as symbols of status and power. However, this practice has been criticized for objectifying and commodifying women. It's seen as a form of control and dominance over women, reducing them to mere objects to be passed around. Critics argue that it devalues women and reinforces harmful gender stereotypes. On the other hand, some argue that these women willingly participate in these practices out of a sense of belonging or loyalty to the club. They see it as a form of rebellion against societal norms and conventions. Everyone who is a Hells Angel has to follow the 6th rule, which is shocking. The patch and vest that club members wear are seen as holy by the group. It's also called the full patch. You can see the Death Head logo, 2 rockers, and the MC patch below the Death's Head's wings on these 4 pieces of gear. Members must wear these patches whenever they are together because the club has strict rules about what to wear. But keep in mind that unless you're a Hell's Angel, this type of clothing is against the law and has a lot of brand names on it. People who have been in the club for a long time are the only ones who can wear these patches. Do not think that these patches will make you feel like you belong. Get rid of that thought right away. There are real members who will hurt you badly if they see you wearing these patches without permission. Another rule of the Hell's Angels is that when a member leaves or dies, they must return their club patches to the club. This is how it works, because the patches are owned by the Hell's Angels Biker Club. People who quit the club badly might have to give up their patches and get rid of tattoos that show they are a member. In this case, J. Anthony Jaybird, a former ATF special agent, says that messing with a member's patch could cause bad things to happen. You can't touch a Hell's Angel on the back or their patch. I did those things wrong, and they got me into trouble. Sometimes they even hit me. Detective Julian Scher says that the Hell's Angels vest is so holy that any damage done to it could be seen as a sin. Let's say a member goes to jail. They must give their coat to one of their brothers to take care of and not let a non-member touch it. John Jordan, a medical officer at the SMDC Health Systems Manager, says that everyone should learn how to help a Hell's Angels member in a crisis. Cutting through a patch to get to an injury is against the rules. When a Hell's Angel leaves the club, this is also a very important thing to do. Everything you have to give back if you leave the Angels for any reason. A few people say that another member also surgically removes their scars. To put it another way, if you leave the Hell's Angels, you have to cut all ties with the biker club. From 2001 to 2003, Jay Dobbins infiltrated the Hell's Angels and stayed there. He also talked about the strict but necessary rule that said prospects and fully patched members couldn't talk to each other. There was a lot of talk about how you had to take off your sunglasses and look a Hell's Angel in the eyes if you saw one. They thought this move was important because they wanted to see the eyes of the possibility. Also, Hell's Angels made it clear that riders should take off their gloves before shaking hands with them. The undercover agent also told more about the notorious outlaw biker club and their strange but strict rules about having sexual relationships. Members were not allowed to have any kind of sexual interaction with other members' partners, wives, or friends. People often got into more and more fights when this rule was broken. The gang had a structure, and old ladies were the wives or lovers of members who weren't allowed to be with other members. Someone was strongly told that they would be heavily and violently punished if they were caught trying to do something wrong with a member's spouse or partner. People who are part of the Hell's Angels must always look out for each other as brothers. This is clear from the story of Joseph Lancia, who led the RHS Island chapter of the Hell's Angels. He took a chance on getting a longer jail term to keep his Cadillac Lounge guests safe. People who are part of the Hell's Angels are expected to stay together, even when things get rough. This is clear from the story of Meredith Curly Hunter Jr. He got stabbed after pulling out a gun at the 1969 Altamont Free event to shoot bikers. These rules aren't just meant to keep us safe, though. In May 2019, a fight broke out between the Hell's Angels and the Bandidos gang in Belp, which is southeast of Bern. The fight went to court. The fight started when the Bandidos tried to open a charter in Switzerland. They thought this was an insult and attacked them. He had 6 guns, an assault rifle, knives, machetes, baseball bats, pepper spray, and tasers. The Swiss police had to step in and take them all. Many people were hurt in the fight, which is why the case went to court. 22 people from different gangs were also charged with being in the fight. To get to Bern in time for the hearing, the Hell's Angels and the Bandidos had to drive from different parts of Switzerland and more than one country. Even outside the building, the two gangs were still very angry with each other. There was a small fight outside where stones and bottles were thrown. The Swiss cops had to use water guns and rubber shots to stop the fight between the two groups. One suspect got 8 years in jail for planning to kill someone, another got 42 years for trying to badly hurt someone, and the third got 8 months for fighting. 19 bikers were also tried for fighting and helping the bad guys. Not all of them were found guilty, but some were and were given 10-month jail terms that were later stopped. Swiss people paid a lot of attention to this fight. But there was something else interesting about it, and the trial that followed. Hell's Angels members wouldn't say anything about the fight during the meeting because they are known for having a strict code of silence. It is very important to the club to protect its members, both past and present, and they only speak out when they have to. Nobody in the Hell's Angels is allowed to talk to the public, which is another important rule that everyone has to follow. People know that it's very hard to join the Hell's Angels riding club, mostly because they have a code of silence. The club's secrets and safety are kept safe by this rule. People who belong to the club can't talk to the media about it because information could get out and be used against them. The most well-known Hell's Angels member, Sonny Barger, writes in his book that the group has secret rules and laws that will never be made public. It shouldn't have been a surprise that the Hell's Angels didn't talk about the fight or explain what they did. Things went the same way at the Hell's Angels annual summer meeting in Carlton, Minnesota, which had around 500 members. Reporters were always talking to the members, but they always turned their backs on them or cut them off quickly when they noticed who they were talking to. Because of this tight promise to keep things secret, there is another strange rule that all members must follow to the letter. The Hell's Angels really dislike people who watch or tell on others. It's the most important thing and person they hate. To be more specific, this is the major reason police officers can't join the gang. Members will be punished severely if they betray the club or their brothers. Jay Dobbins, an ATF agent, joined the Hell's Angels in secret as part of a plan called Operation Black Biscuit. In this case, it's very clear. Hi, my name is Jay Dobbins and I used to work for the government, but now I'm a spy for the Hell's Angels. People in the gang called me Jaybird, but as a secret spy, my name was Jay Davis. They let me into the Mesa, Arizona charter of the Hell's Angels because I told them I was a gun runner and a bill collection. People in the gang were happy to see me because I had the right personality, attitude, and looks for the job. I faked the death of a member of the Mongols, a rival biker gang, to get them to trust me even more. I showed the Hell's Angels pictures and videos of another police officer claiming to be a dead Mongol member who was buried in a poor grave and covered in lamb brains and blood. This made them happy. As a sign of my love, I even sent them a bloody Mongol patch. But the case was over in 2004, and everyone found out who I really was. Being honest about this betrayal was not easy for the Hell's Angels, which was a bad thing. They believed in me and saw me as one of them. I began getting violence and death threats soon after I left the gang. Most of them were directed at my family. People from the Hell's Angels put pictures of what they called Arizona rats on their website in the first case. An email with a picture of Dobbins and the words, "Hope everything was okay," was one of these. But these texts and pictures had threats in them, so Dobbins and his family had to leave Arizona for a while. They had to move again in 2005 because Dobbins learned that the Hell's Angels had agreed to kill him with the Aryan Brotherhood. He then had his home in Tucson burned down in the middle of the night in August 2008, after the ATF made the address public. The good news is that Dobbins' wife and kids were only slightly hurt from breathing in smoke. No matter what, the fire ruined their house and most of their things. Dobbins also said that the Hell's Angels and their friends were going to give him an HIV shot, kill his wife and daughter, and take his wife and daughter. When asked about how violent Hell's Angels members are, especially when they attack spies, Dobbins said that these threats were truly taken very seriously. The people in the outlaw riding gang may not have college degrees, but they know how to use fear and violence to get what they want. It's a big part of their dangerous way of life. Dobbins said that these people are very dangerous because they are men who live on the edge and are always surrounded by violence. It's not a surprise that this happened because Sonny Barger wrote in his book, Hell's Angels, that the group doesn't like spies. Barger says that most spies are cocky jerks who like making threats and being in charge. But when the full power of the club hits them, they run away quickly and swear to always be faithful. Barger also said that if these people were in trouble, they wouldn't think twice about breaking their promises of loyalty. Outside of the Hell's Angels biker club, it's common for people to leave their brothers to stay safe. Being reliable and working together is important to the club's code of honor, so a rat is the worst enemy. People who are part of the Hell's Angels can't be a part of any other riding groups. Everyone in the group has to follow this rule. If someone joins the Hell's Angels, They can't help any other group. The Hells Angels are known for always fighting with other biker groups, even though they are sometimes called a social group. We feel bad that we have become the people we used to fight. This idea was brought up in a meeting that I left early from. We used to work with other clubs along the coast, but by 2011, we were in fights with the cops and every big criminal bike club in the US. Some people lost sight of why they were living an illegal life in the first place at this point. A fight broke out between two groups, making it look like a military task. He used these exact words. George Christie used to be the leader of the Hells Angels. After 40 years, he had to leave the club because it was getting more dangerous. It's easy to understand why the Hells Angels make it so hard for their members to join other biker gangs. They have a history of fighting with the Mongols, the Bandidos, and almost every other biker gang. The American Motorcyclist Association won't let the Hells Angels join because of this very strict rule. If you thought these were the only rules, get ready for more. 49 people who are accused of being part of a criminal gang with ties to the Hells Angels went on trial at Spain's top court on Monday. The last time cops cracked down on the group was on the holiday island of Muir on July 23, 2013. After almost 10 years, this important event took place. Frank Hainbuth was caught at that time. It was well known that he was a Hells Angel and led the MCA group. It was said that Hainbuth and some other people were in charge of a crime ring that did illegal prostitution, money laundering, and drug selling. Outlaw biker and professional boxer Frank Armin Hainbuth was well known in Germany. He was seen as the leader of the Hells Angels in Europe. Hainbuth was in charge of the Hells Angels Handover Charter, which was the most valuable and important charter in Germany. Hainbuth went to MCA in Spain after police searched his home because they thought he had hired several people to kill people. He became the leader of the local Hells Angels group and didn't get into any trouble until 2013. When he was caught, he was accused of using prostitution to make money and making women work in Hells Angels homes. If he is found guilty, he could spend a lot of time in jail. A German named Frank Hainbuth used to be the leader of the Hells Angels. The government wants him to go to jail for up to 13 years and pay a fine of $4.56 million. When Hainbuth was caught dealing drugs, the law saw the Hells Angels in an even worse light than they were before. The fact that he was arrested and is being tried also breaks a holy rule that everyone in the group must follow. It may come as a surprise that the Hells Angels Biker Club doesn't let its members use drugs, given how tough they look. Friendship is very important to the club because they believe that drug abuse can make it hard for members to put the club first. Members can smoke weed or cigarettes and drink, but they can't add drugs to their drinks or use hard drugs. Keep in mind that not all Hells Angels use drugs. A lot of them even put their health and exercise ahead of everything else. Even though they have a bad name, the club really does care about following the rules. So another important Hells Angels rule is that all members must always show up to meetings and events. You have to work hard for years to become a Hells Angels member. It's a great way to show your support for the club. Always being on time for meetings and answering the phone right away is a great way to show how loyal you are. Every member of the club needs to be at every meeting, which is also known as church or the clubhouse. They also can't miss club events, as that would show they're not committed or respectful. Their code of silence says that everything said in the clubhouse is kept hidden. This is why the Hells Angels club meetings are so important to them. Each member is also required to attend church every week and take part in group processions and other club-related events. Because they care so much about the club, many Hells Angels can't keep full-time jobs because they are always traveling. Having a full-time job can make a member less dedicated to the club because it comes first. Any member who doesn't show up to a clubhouse meeting will have to pay a fine between $150 to $250. One more thing that shows this focus is how they work together as a group. It is very important to always ride in order if you are a Hells Angels member. This rule not only shows the club's order, it also makes sure that everyone will always follow it. There is a president, vice president, secretary or manager, sergeant at arms, and road captain in charge of this Hells Angels group. This is why the head or president of a charter is always in the lead, even if it puts him in the most danger. After the president comes the vice president, the road captain, and the sergeant at arms. On the other hand, prospect traits are often very far down the list. It keeps things in order and makes sure that no brother is left behind in case of an accident or pull. Also, no matter how many people are in the pack, if one of them gets pulled over by the police, the whole thing stops. Lots of people won't try to block the pack because of this ride order. So, if you see a bunch of Hell's Angels, stay behind them. You might hurt yourself if you try to join the group and split it up. The most important rule of the Hell's Angels is that once you join, you are stuck with them for life. If someone is a Hell's Angels member, they can't leave the group, not even after they die. This is done on purpose so that the Hell's Angels can find the most committed people. The process for joining can be very hard. So, if you think joining the Hell's Angels is like joining a casual group of friends that you can leave whenever you want, you're wrong. You have to really want to be a Hell's Angel because you can't leave or quit. A person should be a member for life, unless they die or leave the club for certain reasons. Even though someone dies, their life does not end. Instead, to remember the dead, their brothers get together and plan a very traditional and solemn funeral parade. If someone is still a Hell's Angel, they can only leave if they are in serious trouble with the law or are kicked out for breaking the rules of membership. This is shown very well by the story of George Christie, who was the head of the Hell's Angels charter in Ventura, California. Christie had to cut ties with the club because he was in trouble with the law. He had been in charge of the group for 40 years. Plans to kill the head of the Mexican mafia jail gang for money were one of the charges against him. In 1987, he was found not guilty of this charge, but 4 years later, he was caught again for setting fire to nearby tattoo shops with other people. Christie spent about a year in jail before he was freed in 2011. He claims that these events took place because the Hell's Angels are mad at almost all other riding groups. Having this information made him decide to leave the club. Late that same year, he told everyone in a meeting that he was leaving the club, which is the right thing to do. He also took off his patch and left. But Christie didn't know that there wasn't a real way to leave the Hell's Angels, and a few weeks later, he had to deal with the consequences of what he did. He found out that the club where he had spent most of his time no longer thought well of him and gave him an out bad review. This made the outlaw biker group avoid him, and he couldn't talk to other members. Any attempt to talk to him puts the safety of those involved at risk. There were rumors that he had become a government spy, which is against the law because things got so bad. Christie wasn't joking when the Hell's Angels told her she had to leave the club because it was the worst thing they could do. He talked about how hard it was because he had spent most of his life in the club and didn't have many friends outside of it. But some people, like David LaBrava, have left the Hell's Angels without any trouble. He is one of the few people who left the club on good terms. As a technical assistant for the show, he was hired because he used to be in the Oakland chapter. His job was to make sure that the show really showed an outlaw biker club. He told everyone on Instagram in 2019 that he was leaving the Hell's Angels, even though he had been given a role. LaBrava said he quit the club on his own, and for good reason. He now thinks of himself as a normal person. The Hell's Angels are set up like a fighting club, but they have rules to make sure everything runs easily. The Hell's Angels often live a life full of danger and riots, even within the ranks of their club. From the US to Europe for decades, violent battles have raged among the Hell's Angels, between different chapters, but also within these chapters. The battle for power is real, and their goal is simple: to hope to avoid death altogether, as long as they are not a target by any other criminal. This is the shocking story of the most feared Hell's Angel in Europe. Although they hope to avoid death and make the right decision, disaster struck for one of the most feared and notorious Hell's Angels in history. His demise is imminent. He is so notorious and feared that even gang bosses are afraid of his authority and influence. The legendary boss of the Hell's Angels. Chapter in Hanover, Germany, Frank Hainbuch, not only controls the local nightlife scene, but his influence has even extended into the middle class and even upper class society. As a former professional boxer, he formed the epitome of the Hell's Angels chapter in Germany. But there is more. With his power, he has established a vast empire of pubs, brothels, and sports studios. During the years, he had cultivated strong connections with civil society. Everyone knows Hainbuch, and no one wants to face the consequences of what might happen if you have him against you. His popularity showed when he got married in the summer of 2017, just outside of Hanover in Germany. This wasn't just an ordinary wedding, it was a folk festival with musicians, loads of people, and of course a lot of food and alcohol. Frank Hanebuth was a force to be reckoned with. Why? He has the rare ability to be both a gangster and a likable person who could be anyone's friend. However, the scene has undergone significant changes in recent years, and Frank Hanebuth has not emerged unscathed. Nevertheless, he remains a prominent figurehead of the club, and undoubtedly the most recognizable member in Germany. But how did he gain his power, and what exactly happened in the last years? Let's dive straight into this remarkable and unique story. Hanebuth served as the intermediary between the dark, criminal underground and the upper-class bourgeoisie. And to achieve this, he had an important layer standing next to him to make it all happen. No one other than Götz Werner von Fromberg. He also served as the best man to Gerhard Schroeder, the former German lobbyist and politician who held the position of Chancellor of Germany from 1998 to 2005. He was a huge name in the business. Under his mediation, the Hells Angels even concluded a peace treaty with the rival Bandidos, an experienced lawyer with an impressive track record, and also a person to fear if you have him against you. But Hanebuth wanted to do things differently. He decided to create this unique Hells Angels experience for all members, even with its own brands of beer and cigarettes. An elite club within the Hells Angels, a way to distinguish themselves from other chapters. A sign that Hanebuth is the prominent leader, claiming his power and ability to lead. In no time, he had also become a prominent figure in the nightlife scene, attracting thousands of people to parties in the red light district. Because of his connections in the upper class, the local authorities even supported these events. Even policemen weren't allowed to intrude in these events. This says it all. It shows his power and ties with the upper class and authorities. Although it seems like this was a recipe for disaster, according to some sources, the presence of Hanebuth and his control created a peaceful and safe environment for all people present. This showed when Hanebuth was in jail later, and the district was flooded with Lebanese, Russian, and Albanian gangs attacking each other on the open street every day. Later, when Hanebuth got out of prison, everything went back to normal, and all the clubs were safe again. As simple as that. Even these foreign gangs feared him and knew about his power and notoriety. This shows the power of Hanebuth and his ability to control literally everything. But his presence and dominance were also very important for Germany and Hanover. Economically, he has established a strong presence in this area, making it challenging to diminish his influence. Was this all part of his plan? He infiltrated all layers of society, surrounding him with a powerful layer, making him an essential figure, not only for the Hells Angels, but also for Hanover and the area. But the question arises, will Frank Hanebuth continue to enjoy unrestricted freedom to move around Germany in the future? How far does his power stretch? Is he really untouchable? And more importantly, how will he address the ongoing internal tension within the Hells Angels? Will he be open to compromise, or will he fiercely defend his position as the most powerful Hells Angel in Europe, showing no mercy? But the fierce battle for power isn't just between members of the Hells Angels, but also with other motorcycle clubs, like the Bandidos. The clash between the Hells Angels and the Bandidos is one of brotherhoods and brutal violence, with both sides fighting for dominance and territory. And both motorcycle clubs are beyond relentless. They will cross any boundary to emerge victorious, leaving behind a trail of bloodshed and destruction. And there is no end in sight. It seems that this intense rivalry isn't cooling down anytime soon. This intense rivalry and war between the Hells Angels and Bandidos erupted in 2007. In this war, investigators also targeted Hanebuth as the leader of the Hells Angels. During this time, the Hells Angels recruited a bunch of young men to join forces to back them up. The more notorious and vicious these members, the better. But this strategy would soon backfire on Hanebuth as they recruited someone who would change everything. One of these recruits was Stefan R., who later became a notorious killer. In 2022, a German court sentenced Stefan R. to life in prison for murdering a man he met on an online dating site. The judge in Berlin said that Stefan had killed the electrical engineer to act out his fantasies of cannibalism. I will spare you the horrible details, but it shows what kind of people they recruited to defeat the Bandidos. But recruiting Stefan R. changed everything. He later snitched on the Hells Angels, becoming a key witness in exchange for a reduced sentence for his involvement in human trafficking. According to Stefan R.'s testimony, the missing Turkish Tekin B had allegedly been tortured and brutally executed by the Hells Angels in a car repair shop. However, there was no evidence to support his claims, and it was later revealed that the witness was unreliable. Before a raid on Hainbuth's estate, other police authorities had already warned about this. During the raid, the GSG-9, the elite special forces unit of the German Federal Police, shot his dog, just to stir the pot. To make it clear that all eyes were on Hainbuth. It became pretty clear to Hainbuth that he is grappling with power struggles within his gang as well. The betrayal from within his own ranks and the constant pressure from law enforcement could mean the end of his position and the Hells Angels chapter. Hainbuth's life hangs in the balance. But how far is he willing to go to protect his status, wealth, authority, and prestige? And what risks is he prepared to take? Therefore, in 2013, he did the unthinkable and left Germany. He moved from Hanover to Majorca, the Spanish island in the Mediterranean Sea. Speculation suggests that the leader of the Hells Angels grew weary of the cold and dreary streets of Hanover and sought a fresh start with a new venture. However, one cannot help but wonder if the allure of beautiful weather, palm trees, and sandy beaches was the sole motivation behind Hainbuth's relocation. Could this be yet another calculated move to amass more wealth, power, and glory? Will his arrival on the Spanish island ignite international conflicts and bloodshed in Europe's most renowned party city? The sunny beaches of Majorca appeared to be the ideal setting for him to further establish his reign of terror, far away from the prying eyes of law enforcement. However, Hainbuth's plans did not unfold precisely as he had envisioned. Yet again, he faced unseen challenges he had to deal with. It didn't take long after he arrived at the beautiful island of Majorca that he got arrested by the Spanish police at a friend's place. Moving from Germany to Spain didn't give him a free pass to run away from his past and actions. The police arrested Hainbuth. The charges ranged from money laundering to drug trafficking and even to prostitution. Serious allegations. He ends up in custody and leaves behind a power vacuum among the Hells Angels in Germany. Who is going to take over his role as leader, or will he be able to somehow keep on reign from his Spanish jail? It took the Spanish authorities more than 3 years to investigate this case, but surprisingly enough, the authorities do not have enough evidence to charge Hainbuth for these crimes. In 2016, he was allowed to travel back to Hanover, Germany, to celebrate his 50th birthday. A memorable event for Hainbuth and another turning point. Back home, Frank Hainbuth is welcomed by hundreds of Hells Angels, friends, families, and even business partners. Everyone seemed to be happy that Hainbuth was back to where he belonged. Hainbuth moved forward straight away and started his journey as a pub landlord. But the main question remained, will he be able to reclaim his power and status as the prominent figure he once was? During this period, the power struggle within the biker scene enters its next phase. Will Hainbuth's return to Hanover mark the beginning of a new era of Hells Angels dominance? Or will his adversaries finally succeed in permanently bringing him down? We all know that brotherhood is one of the core values of the Hells Angels, and they use violence against anyone who snitches on them or betrays their trust of the principles of the motorcycle club. However, the true extent of this brotherhood is often questioned. What happens when wealth and power take precedence over honor and principles, even surpassing the value of another Hells Angel's life? A former hooligan from East Berlin discovers firsthand that the bonds within rocker brotherhoods are not always as strong as they seem. During this time, their president, Holger Bossen, also known as Hako, holds immense power within the club. However, in 2008, he was expelled for allegedly embezzling money. Bossen seeks to rejoin the club, but Andre Sommer, another powerful Hells Angels member, is determined to prevent his return. It is rumored that Hako had stolen from the club, leading to his expulsion, and then Bossen decided to take action. On June 10, 2012, an armed killer carrying a Sig Sauer 9mm firearm headed towards Zingster Strasse in the Hohenschönhausen district of East Berlin, the place where the president always parked his motorcycle. All of a sudden, Oleg Tsaryov, a 36-year-old Ukrainian entrepreneur with pro-Russian affiliations, emerges from the bushes during the gunfire. The initial shot narrowly misses his heart, grazing his pericardium instead. Subsequent shots penetrated his chest, causing significant damage to the 400-pound man. Surprisingly, he remains conscious and fortunate as the vital blood vessels remain unharmed. However, the next shot, aimed at his abdomen and liver, narrowly avoids the abdominal aorta by a mere 2 centimeters. The final life-threatening shot strikes his severely injured body in the 12th thoracic vertebra, narrowly avoiding severing his spinal cord by a single centimeter. Paralysis would have been the result if the shot had landed slightly further. The individuals responsible for this heinous act are Holger Bosson and Michael W., also known as Russian Michael. Bosson has confessed to the investigators, admitting his involvement in the crime. Allegedly, they intended to teach Summer a lesson. As a consequence, Holger Bosson has been sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for attempted incitement to murder. Holger Bosson is said to have committed the attack as revenge, but it is not clear exactly why. It was initially thought that Summer had fallen victim to a feud between the Hells Angels and the rival motorcycle club Bandidos. Tensions have been running high since the beginning of 2012, and the police are still afraid that the case will escalate completely. Remarkably, Andre Summer makes a surprising recovery from this brutal attack and even gains a higher reputation than before. However, this incident raises questions about the internal dynamics of the Hells Angels motorcycle club. When individual disputes escalate into larger conflicts within the club, how far will veteran members go to protect their power against newcomers? Furthermore, how many violent individuals are needed to orchestrate a coup within the organization? Over the past decade, a significant number of men with a migrant background have joined the Hells Angels. In the Frankfurt chapter, Aygun Mukuk, a Turkish member, is among the first to have foreign roots. Leading the Frankfurt Angels is Walter Burkhard, known as Schnitzel Walter, due to his past as a butcher. He has allegedly amassed wealth through underground activities, relying on a combination of street smarts and ruthlessness. In 2014, Aygun Mukuk gathered dissatisfied rockers around him, intending to establish his own branch of the Angels. At first, Walter doesn't have any problems with Mukuk's plans to grow. Soon, though, he changes his mind, and he decides not to give Mukuk the lucrative bouncer jobs at brothels and clubs. Things get worse until there is a fight at Frankfurt's Katana Club. Mukuk is in charge of 40 men who storm the building. One of Schnitzel's men shoots at Mukuk, who miraculously lives, according to a police investigation that follows. The Angels also fire guns, which has never happened before, but is said to be harmless. There are going to be disagreements in Mukuk's group, just like there are in any big family. A fight breaks out at the door. Mukuk's main source of power is in the immigrant community, where he has formed new gangs like the Guerrilla Nation and the Ottomans. At a fighting match in Offenbach, he shows off his connections in public. Good people always make good friends, right? We know them and everyone else. The cops call these groups of guys rocker-like and see them as Mukuk's insurance. With these men on Mukuk's side, he can increase the size and presence of his own forces without publicly accepting them as members. This lets him avoid the rules that go along with it, like having to help out in case of fights, accidents, or detentions. In 2016, the famous World Meeting of the Hells Angels also talked about Mukuk. In Warsaw, Hells Angels from all over the world got together to talk about the club's future. In particular, they talked about what Aygun Mukuk did, who is said to have broken the club's rules again. But Mukuk is now freed, and when he does, he greets police officers who know the scene, even though the rockers' rules say that doing so is absolutely forbidden. There is a rule that says you can't talk to the police in any way, but it looks like Mukuk doesn't follow it, which makes the older members of the Hells Angels clubs very angry. Mukuk just won't be punished and doesn't care about the Hells Angels' long-standing rules. In Berlin, Mukuk goes to the funeral of the leader of the new gang Guerrilla Nation. It doesn't worry Mukuk at all that this gang is in direct competition with the Berlin Hells Angels and has even fought with them. As a Hells Angel from the Frankfurt area, Mukuk isn't allowed to look for followers in Berlin because it gets in the way of the Berlin Angels' work. Still, Mukuk leads the Berlin funeral parade with courage. The rocker boss spends 20 minutes at the graveyard, which gives him plenty of time to think about his own death. The 35-year-old was shot 17 times at a very close range. It is no surprise that he didn't survive this gruesome attack. And what makes things even more mysterious is the fact that to this day, the murder remains unsolved. The lesson? If you want to play with the big guys, always watch your back in case you have made some enemies along the way. The entry of members like Aygun Mukuk, emblematic of the changing landscape within the Angels, further complicated the already volatile club dynamics. Mukuk's rule-breaking and bold maneuvers highlighted a shift in traditional codes, creating rifts that threatened the club's long-standing norms.